In this video project, I will be comparing the purpose and leadership of both the Hispaniola and the Virginia colony. Although both were established by European powers and located in the Americas, they differed in outcome and disposition. The Hispaniola colony was established in 1492 by Christopher Columbus and his men. When they embarked on the island, they met the native Taino Indians. From the initial contact, the Taino Indians were subjugated to inimical conditions by the Spanish powers. Even though the Taino people tried to rebel against the foreign invaders, the odds were stacked against them, which led to their total defeat. In effect, Columbus himself ruled the colony and its lands as royal governor. The Spanish did not have their sights set on lasting occupation of the island or the extended utilization of its fertile lands. Rather, they focused on extracting the gold, both from the native Taino people and the island itself. The Spanish forced the native Taino people to submit as slave labor, forcing them to extract the gold from the island through their mines. Columbus imposed a prohibition against foraging expeditions on the native Taino people, as an attempt to protect his own interests. Columbus also imposed a regulated taxation system among the settlers. In order to avoid unrest among the settlers, Columbus developed impuesto repartimiento system, in which settlers were guaranteed a generous tract of land and the resource of native slave workforce at their own disposal. The settlers didn't even have to swear any obligation to the authorities under the repartimiento system. In turn, the repartimiento system did not last long. It was replaced by the encomienda system in 1509. All land was now property of the crown. Therefore, everyone residing in Hispaniola, including the natives, were now considered tenants in Spanish land. As tenants, the people in Hispaniola had to provide service to the crown as tribute. The settlers were, quote, entitled to authority over the natives. They utilized their workforce in order to fulfill their work tribute for the crown. A more institutionalized system of slavery was imposed. Eventually, due to the high mortality rates of the native Taino people, caused by the impossible demands of the Spanish slave owners and the diseases transported by them, the slave labor source was replaced by externally based African people, which the Spanish themselves brought to the island of Hispaniola. Due to the political systems put in place, decentralization of political power occurred. The early grant of generous amounts of land without any obligation to the ruling authorities incorporated a culture of local sovereign authorities. The capital of Hispaniola, Santo Domingo, had great difficulty staying on par with the rulings of the crown. Due to this, tenants with large tracts of land became de facto political leaders. This led to many of these rulers leading with paternalism, personalism, and authoritarian methods. In 1499, the local tenant rulers riled up a mutiny against Christopher Columbus. They were successful. They forced Columbus back to Spain in chains. Then, his successor, Francisco de Bodavia, Chief Justice and Royal Commissioner by the Spanish Crown. He was soon replaced, however, as he was not considered a fit ruler. Bodavia was replaced in 1503 by Nicolas de Ovando, who assumed the titles of Governor and Supreme Justice instead. In 1509, Columbus' son, Diego Columbus, was appointed governor of the colony of Santo Domingo, Hispaniola. Wary to previous complications between the ruling of Hispaniola by Spain, the crown incorporated the audiencia system in 1511, which was a new political institution intended to limit the power of the governor. The first audiencia was a tribunal composed of 3 judges, whose jurisdiction extended over all the West Indies. In this region, it formed the highest court of appeal. The tribunal's influence grew, and in 1524, it was designated the Royal Audiencia of Santo Domingo. Employment of the audiencia eventually spread throughout all of Spanish America as the court representing the crown. The audiencia was given expanded powers that included administrative, legislative, and consultative functions. Eventually, as the gold ran out of the Hispaniola colony's lands, a matter of importance for the Spanish royal crown did as well. Population numbers lowered significantly. Resources were mostly focused on other more fruitful colonies. Hispaniola was eventually conquered by other European powers. In comparison, the colony of Virginia, which was the first successful British colony in the Americas, was settled in 1607 by the Virginia Company, which was backed up by investors and even King James himself. The Virginia colony did not just intend to extract the resources from the land, but rather utilize the fertile lands as well, and set up an everlasting colony for which to be able to participate in long-term trade. The setup of the colony started off as a business venture for investors who wanted to gain profits of the untamed wilderness that Virginia had to offer. One of the settlers' main purpose was to cultivate the land and export mostly tobacco. Which in turn was led by a council president. From 1611 to 1618, the settlers of the colony were under a regime of martial law, under the orders of Sir Thomas Dale. In 1624, King James I transferred jurisdiction from the Virginia Company to the British Crown. In 1634, a new system of local government was created in the Virginia colony. 8 shires were designated, each with its own local officers. From 1619 to 1775, the colonial legislature of Virginia was the House of Burgesses, which governed in conjunction with a colonial governor. After declaring independence from the British Crown, the colony of Virginia became reformed as Commonwealth of Virginia. Once the Declaration of Independence was fully adopted in July of 1776, the territory previously occupied by the Virginia colony became divided into the modern states of Virginia, West Virginia, Kentucky, Indiana, and Illinois, as well as portions of Ohio and western Pennsylvania. Both European powers fulfilled their purposes and forever ingrained in the lands.